Okay, Biggs, it's time for me to read some more Ulysses More, The Door to Time. And yesterday I read 2 chapters. I read 2 and 3, and now I'm going to read 4 and 5. Hope you guys are having a great day. I love you very much. This story's kind of getting pretty interesting, isn't it? The first room Rick entered was open and spacious. It was like a porch. Library and sitting room all in one. 3 large picture windows flooded the room with light, providing a view of the cliff edge and beyond. Shelves along the walls were filled with stacks of hardcover books and magazines. Newspapers rested on a crystal top table. In the center of the room was a life-size statue of a woman mending a fishing net that draped down from her hands. The fisherwoman gazed out at a fixed point in the sea with a dreamy look on her face. Rick stared at that. Suddenly, she seemed very familiar to him. "Nice room, isn't it?" said Jason, appearing suddenly in the entryway. Rick grinned. "Oh, very." "Well, I'm glad you're here," Jason said warmly. "Maybe you can help us find our way around. We still feel a little lost in all these rooms." They circled around the statue. Supposedly, the previous owner insisted that this statue never be moved from this place. "Really? That's kind of weird," Rick commented. Jason shrugged. "I guess that's part of the deal." "I don't exactly know," he added. "They say that he was just a little bit crazy." Rick nodded. "Well, that's what they said." Jason continued, "But I don't see how he could have any say over what we do now that he's dead. I mean, if he's really dead." And Rick frowned. "What does that mean, if he's really dead?" "It means my brother has plenty of crazy ideas," Julia's voice broke in, and she gave Rick a smile. Although Jason and Julia were twins, their personalities were as different as the sun and the moon. Apart from the fact that one was a boy and the other a girl, Jason and Julia had that same light-colored hair, the same eyes, the same dimpled cheeks, but Julia was slightly taller and more athletic than Jason, as if she were in more of a hurry to grow up. And their minds, the way they thought about things, made them total opposites. Julia plopped down in front of the armchairs near the statue of the fisherwoman. "I've been listening to Jason tell wild stories since we first arrived from the city," she told Rick. "Father says he has an overactive imagination. Maybe someday he'll write all these stories down and become really famous." Jason blushed. He was kind of embarrassed. Rick sensed Jason's discomfort. "I promise to read all your stories after you become famous," he said with a smile. "But until then, do you think we could go exploring?" Julie looked at Rick sharply. "You're another explorer type, are you?" she asked him. "In a place like this," Rick gushed. "Of course. Who wouldn't be? I want to check out every room, every dark closet, every secret stairway and hidden trapdoor." Jason's face lit up. "Can I tell you something? I think this house is—" "Oh, no, please don't start that again," protested Julia. Rick looked from Julia to Jason. "Go on," he said. "What were you going to say?" "I think it's haunted," Jason said. Julia squirmed in her armchair. "That's right, folks," she said, adopting a voice like a radio DJ. "You're listening to WACKO, Wacko on your radio dial. And the hits just keep coming," she joked. Rick looked back and forth between the twins, realizing he was then caught in the middle of an ongoing war between brother and sister. He considered how to answer without offending one or the other, and he didn't want to disappoint Jason, but he didn't want to look foolish in front of Julia either. The solution? Answer with another question. "Why do you think there's a ghost?" he asked Jason. Jason said, "I've heard footsteps upstairs when nobody's here but me." Jason explained. His eyes were wide and earnest. "But mostly it's just a feeling, this just weird sense I have about this house, like there's a presence or there's somebody watching me." "Oh, please," Julia groaned. "What will it be tonight? Chains in the hallway, flushing of toilets." "Why don't you ever believe me, Julia?" Jason complained. "I'm telling you, I heard footsteps on the second floor. I was downstairs. You were asleep. Everybody else was outside." "You have to know one thing, Rick," Julia interrupted. "Jason reads about this stuff all the time. He just loves crazy stuff." Rick studied Jason. If Julia's remark upset him, you couldn't tell by his face. In fact, Jason wore a slight smirk as if he enjoyed Julia's comments. That's when it hit Rick. It was like a dance the twins had been rehearsing for years. They knew every step and every beat. They had had this argument hundreds of times because they liked to have it. Jason thinks that Argo Manor is the home of a famous ghost. Take a guess who it is. Rick felt a little shiver and he thought, oh, it's Ulysses Moore. Because he left something unresolved behind, Jason nodded. Rick looked at Julia. What can I say? His elevator doesn't run all the way to the top. He's got belts in his belfry. But he's my twin and I love him. But he's completely nuts. And with that, she swooped over and hugged Jason from behind. Rick was still thinking about the ghost of Ulysses Moore. Something unresolved. Okay, let's say that makes sense and I wonder what it could be. Julia's eyes rolled and plopped down in her chair. I haven't figured that one out yet, Jason answered, but I need to learn more. I've been in Kilmore Cove for less than 2 weeks, and I don't know this house very well yet either. Well, no wonder, said Rick. It's enormous. Jason's eyes twinkled. He had an idea. Hey, let's explore it room by room. We can even make a map. Oh, what fun, mumbled Julia. Hold on while I do a dance for joy. Rick paid her no attention. I love to make a map of this house, he blurted. That would be fantastic. To be honest, I've explored this house practically every day from the outside, that is. For me, it would be the greatest fun. Man, just being here with this statue and the book and you guys, all my life this place has been a magnet drawing me here. Yep, if you guys are up for it, I'm all for exploring every inch of this place. Jason leaped up. I'll get a paper and pen. Back in a second, and he raced out of the room, leaving Rick and Julia alone for the first time. Julia looked out at the sea, washed with white-capped waves. You never said whether or not you believe in ghosts, she said. Her gaze fell on Rick's expression. His expression suddenly became very intense. My brother and I may be very different, but don't let that fool you. He is my best friend in the whole world. Are you playing around with him, or do you really believe that there's people upstairs? Rick leaned against the statue of the fisherwoman, which felt solid and surprisingly warm. My father used to say that all kinds of things exist, so who knows? Maybe there's old Ulysses upstairs. And so Julia asks, so who is your guy that you think is hanging around you? And he said, my father. He died 2 years ago, and every day he's with me. They sat in silence looking out at the sea until Jason returned. The map, chapter 5. The kids started out exploring the second floor, working methodically room by room, and then went down to the ground floor. They set up base in the stone room, the oldest room in the house, and began to draw the map of Argo Manor. Rick naturally fell into the role of the leader. No one voted on it. That simply was the way it was. He was the one who took the lead, and Julia and Jason instantly respected his decisions. Whatever it was that makes a leader, bravery or strength or force of personality, Rick seemed to have it all. Now he was bent studiously over the hand-drawn map. There are 3 chimneys, he noted. 1 in the kitchen, 1 here, and 1 outside. 4 bathrooms, 2 large dining rooms, 5 bedrooms, 1 library, a smaller library, and what did you write here, Julia? A private study. That's the room with the massive ancient desk. The one next to the library with the painted ceiling, and 1 private study, Rick concluded. Is this staircase the one with all the paintings? Pointing to the map. No, that's the one that leads down to the cellar, Jason answered. Rick nodded. The cellar. So far they hadn't given that a good look. It's an immense space, dark and cold and kind of dusty, and it's packed with old furniture and boxes that were stacked to the ceiling in such a way that the only free space left was a narrow passageway. The cellar kind of creeps me out, said Julia. No one disagreed. If I were somebody hanging around here, that'd be the last place I'd stay, she continued. I thought you didn't believe in ghosts. Well, I'm just playing along, Julia said. It's not like there's anything else to do here in Dullsville. Sure, Julia, Jason commented. You're just playing along. So all that's left is the room with the tower at the top of the stairs, and then we're done with all the main rooms. The lighthouse room, murmured Rick. Why do you call it that? Well, every night Ulysses Moore seemed to be up there, Rick answered. The light in that room was always on through the night, as if old Ulysses wanted to compete with the other lighthouse, the real one on the side of the bay. They remained in silence for a few moments, imagining the light of the tower atop the cliff shining out, a beacon in the darkness, calling distant travelers home. Do you know anything about him, Rick? Ulysses Moore, I mean. He was mysterious, Rick said with a shrug. I don't think anybody knows much about him. He stayed home. He was rich. and he lived in his own world. And the twins looked at each other, kind of intrigued. He was really an original, you see, Rick continued. Ulysses kept to himself. He never went into town, not even once. In 40 years? In 40 years, Rick confirmed. How could that be possible? Julie asked incredulously. Rick just shook his head. The story is that Ulysses was married to a beautiful dark-haired woman. My mother knew her. She would occasionally come into town to run errands, to buy some fish, pick up the mail, just normal stuff that people do. But Ulysses, he was never seen there. Rick paused, and then she died, and Julia found herself becoming more and more fascinated. Jason listened calmly as if absorbing every word. Well, how did she die? Well, again, that's another mystery. They say that Ulysses never called a doctor, never brought her to the hospital, and one day she was gone. That's all anybody knows. Wow, Julia said. Well, after she died, Ulysses sent the caretaker on the errands. Nestor? You got it, Rick confirmed. And as far as I know, Nestor began working here when the wife was still alive, not long before she died. In a way, I guess Nestor replaced her, and he ran all of Old Man Moore's errands. That's so weird, Julia said. The guy never left the house. I don't get it. Well, there's more. Long ago, before I was born, they said he had a big ship anchored in the inlet at the bottom of the cliff. Right, Jason said. I saw wooden stairs going down. We should definitely check that out. Forget that, Popeye, Julia interrupted. I still want to understand why he never went into town. What was he hiding? Or was he just some kind of a weirdo? Rick tilted his head thoughtfully. With Ulysses Moore, it's impossible to know the real truth. There are stories and legends and rumors and lies, and nobody exactly knows what to believe, except for Nestor. Nestor must know the truth. Rick nodded, and Julia felt a shiver. One story is that he had a terrible scar that went across his face, Rick told the twins. He was ashamed of it. That's why he never showed his face in town. But it's just a story, Jason said. We don't know for sure. The painting, the portraits along the stairs. She grabbed Jason's arm so suddenly he nearly swallowed the pen cap. He gagged and coughed, and the pen fell to the floor, rolling under the large armoire. Sorry about that, said Julie, but there's no time to choke and die right now. We have work to do. Follow me. Julia swept out of the room, and she called over her shoulder, Let's go see the hideous face of Ulysses Moore. Rick and Jason looked at each other and shrugged. They fell into step behind her. They followed the long line of portraits up the stairs, and one by one they read the names. But the portraits suddenly ended in the mid-20th century. Oh my goodness, it's not here. Rick was disappointed. Bummer, I guess they never got around to doing a painting of him. No, they did a painting, all right. It used to hang right here, and he pointed to a blank space on the wall. Well, how do you know? Look closely. This area has been repainted. The color is just a little bit off. Maybe, Rick said. No, wait. Yes, I can see it now. You're right. There used to be something there, and the wall was repainted. But why repaint it? There would have been an outline on the wall, Rick explained. The wall behind the painting would have been protected from dust and dirt. It would have been a clue that someone went through a lot of effort to erase. 1,000 questions ran through their minds. Why? Who? When? They all talked excitedly, and Jason raised his hand to silence Julie and Rick. He cocked his head listening. Do you hear that? He says. Hear what? I did, Rick answered. His eyes climbed the stairs until they landed on a door. It came from up there. Hello, guys. Let's not get all freaky, okay? You probably just... And then she heard it, too. A muffled sound, a thump. Hearing things, Julia said doubtfully. These three friends turned slowly toward the mirrored door at the top of the stairs, the door that led to the tower room, the lighthouse room. The noise was coming from there. Then they stood in stony silence, hearts beating, listening for what sounded like an eternity, but the sound didn't come again. And so, grouped together tightly, they slowly approached the door. The mirror reflected their image, three young kids together, serious, excited, and frightened. Jason reached out his hand and put it on the doorknob and turned it. The door opened slightly, just enough so that he could peek inside, and he hoped to surprise whoever or whatever was in there. What do you see? Rick whispered from over Jason's shoulder. In answer, Jason opened the door wide enough to reveal the entire room. There was a large table positioned at an angle between two windows looking over the sea, a collection of model ships and magazines stacked on the ground, and through the windows the children had a stunning view of the cliff, Kilmore Cove, and the grounds below. Oh, there's nothing here. Well, how could it be? What made that sound? Ta-thump, ta-thump. Only it wasn't footsteps. One of the windows was slightly open, and ever so often it banged against its frame, making the rhythmic noise that first Jason and then the others had mistaken for footsteps. It was just the wind, said Julia. But instead of relief, they felt a little bit disappointed. It was like the air seeping out of a balloon. Still a great view, said Julia. And that's the end of the chapters 4 and 5. And I will pick up with chapter 6. Love you guys. Bye.